Barbie in 1959, Ruth Handler founded Barbie. And the entire vision behind Barbie was, at the time, the only thing little girls can play with was baby dolls. So imagine if you're a little girl. So if all you do is play with baby doll, what do you think little girls were practicing? To be a mom, which was an important career. But that was the only thing that girls were learning to role play. So Ruth Handler's vision was, I want my daughter to see the potential. And so Barbie was designed as a blank canvas, if you will. And that's why Barbie's had now over 150 plus careers. She's been a pilot, an astronaut, a doctor, a pet vet, an ice skater, a newscaster, a judge, you name it.
In this episode, I'm talking to Lori Pantel, CMO of Wella, a professional beauty brand with 140 years of legacy and innovation. Prior to this role, Lori spent 17 years at Mattel. You know, the company that created the Barbie franchise? Yeah, we're gonna talk about number one, Wella's recent decision to move away from traditional TV ads and to OTT ads that are shown on traditional online streaming services like Hulu. Number two, we're gonna talk about her experience at Mattel and the lessons that she learned working on major brands Barbie, Hot Wheels, and Fisher-Price. And number three, finally, we're gonna try to figure out things like Wella's revenue figures, how much money they raised, and how much does Lori make as the CMO of Wella? Are we finally gonna get an answer from a guest? And of course, every single time that she cannot answer a question, we gotta take a shot of hot sauce. Wish me luck, Martians. Hope you enjoy this one. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing on Mars. Today, I don't know how to describe this guest. I'm really excited because there's been a movie that came out recently, a movie called Barbie, and it's very relevant to Lori's past as a marketer. Lori Pantel, currently she's the CMO of a company called Wella, and essentially Wella is a professional beauty brand with over 140 years of legacy and innovation. But before that, Lori worked at a company called Fandango for almost 3 years. And before that, Mattel, which is the company that owns the Barbie franchise. So, Lori, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, so I kind of gave a little bit of a taste of what your background is, but maybe just for the audience, walk us through your past. Like, how would you describe your past and your career and what led you to Wella today?
Yeah, it's a great story, and it's one that I often share. I started off by saying that marketing wasn't my initial goal or career direction. I started off as a pre-law student and then in strategy, and then found myself at Mattel. I was a Barbie girl growing up, so I need to preface it. So deep love, the only toy I played with, and dream summer job between my first and second year of MBA school in strategy. And coming out of that experience was given two opportunities in strategy or marketing. And I had a mentor and I said, what do I do? Because I'm a strategist. And he gave me very good advice. And he asked one very simple question that I think for all of the listeners out there, it's one that I've used for the last 20 years. And he said, where's the heartbeat of the company? Meaning the energy, the excitement, the power source. And I said, marketing. He's like, run. And so I began my career there 20 years ago. So you can guess my age by that, but 20 something years ago as an associate brand manager, knowing very little and nothing about marketing other than the 4 Ps, and spent the next 17 years truly building fundamental expertise in branding, foundational work, obviously working on brands like Barbie, and then eventually Hot Wheels, Monster High, Polly Pocket, iconic brands with heritage. But all of them throughout the time we were there were going through their modernization journey. So it was my second MBA of how to really harness the power of a legacy brand and modernize it. And then after 17 amazing years, I felt the need to challenge myself intellectually. The growth of direct to consumer marketing and performance marketing was on the rise. And then made the jump to Fandango. For those who may not know, it was a ticketing platform and then moved in the cinemas, but has since, it includes brands like Rotten Tomatoes and Vudu. So really it's an entertainment e-commerce platform. Spent 2.5 years there. My third MBA in performance marketing, getting super smart and learning the fundamentals of CRM, attribution, all the buzzwords that marketers need to know. But realized I was missing brand, I was missing product, and had always set my sights on beauty. And then I got the phone call from Wella, which I'll be honest, I was like, let's Wella to the recruiter. And then they said, well, have you heard of a brands like OPI, nail polish, Clairol, Sebastian, Nioxin, and then Wella is a professional brand. And when I dug deep and learned more about the amazing portfolio of brands, all heritage brands, it was a no-brainer to kind of come in at a time that the company was going through transformation. They were recently bought by KKR. So it was my chance to also work for the first time in a private equity-backed company that was going to have an event at some point in my experience.
You're answering all these hot sauce questions that I was gonna ask you.
I don't want to take hot sauce.
We're gonna put a pin on that for now. Your intro touched on too many things, but amazing. Essentially, you are the CMO for billion-dollar companies. I mean, every single company that you've touched, they're large. They're large scale.
But I wasn't always,
legacy.
right? So I think I was not the CMO of Mattel, but I learned brand management, then commercial. So every role I've had has prepared me for a CMO role. Today, I'm the CMO of North America. So there's a global brand lead, but I run all of the marketing activations for Wella throughout North America.
All right. So we're going to dive into Wella. We're going to dive into, obviously, I'm going to dive into the Barbie story because it's fascinating. You and I spoke a couple of weeks back and everything's so fascinating. I'm so excited to dive into it. But before we do that, we got a little bit of a tradition on the show. We always start the show off with a shot of hot sauce. I got something light today because my stomach has not been feeling really, really well. So look, we're going to start off with a shot of hot sauce. And every single time I ask a question that you cannot answer or something that you cannot disclose, you can plead the fifth by taking a shot of hot sauce and we'll skip. So that's the theme of the show. What weapon do you have today?
Okay, so I bought my Cholula hot sauce original, classic. I do like things spicy. I have honestly never taken a shot of hot sauce. And by the way, haven't done so in preparation for this. So this will be an honest reaction because I felt like I'm not sure I want to try it because if I did, I may not want to do this. So I took a spoon. So a spoon's fine, right?
Yeah, spoon's fine. I got a spoon as well.
Okay. Oh God, this is thick. Uh-oh. I'm not the smartest. Hold on. This doesn't come out as easily.
Yeah, okay. It doesn't really come
out okay. Okay. So can you see? Is that?
All right. Cheers.
Oh, wait. Yeah. You have a half a spoonful. Hold on. If you're doing this, I'm doing this. Mine was full. Yours is not full.
It is a bigger spoon, though. This is a bigger spoon.
Whatever. Okay. Hold on. Oh, shoot. Okay. Okay. Ready?
All right. Ready? Cheers.
Cheers.
Ooh.
Oh, my God.
Oh, this is more sour than anything.
Oh. Am I allowed to take a drink?
Yes, you can. I'm going to get some water, too.
Okay.
Ooh. All right. So I've kind of explained a little bit about what Wella does. But let's start off the show by giving Wella some love because that's where you're at right now. What exactly is Wella? Explain their business model and how they make money and just the story behind it.
So Wella's, if you think about the definition, Wella is a professional beauty brand company. It started, its early heritage is 150 years old, 140 years old, based in Germany. And the initial Wella brand was the original in hair color. So think of today, most women who go to the salons get their hair colored. Wella is the OG of hair color, very well respected around the world. Actually is now officially, legally, the number one professional color brand globally. And so, which is amazing. Wow. Yep. Which is an important stat. And it was all based on science and technology, efficacy, product performance, chemistry. In the past 140 years, most in the past 25 years, Wella has actually gone through several different ownerships. They were owned by P&G at that time, and other brands that I said. So Clairol, Sebastian, Nioxin, OPI, recently GHD, and Briogeo are all brands now within the portfolio, had all been at different moments acquired. And about 2.5 years ago, KKR bought Wella from Coty, which is the second major owner. Obviously, if those who know KKR, they're a preeminent private equity firm, and we're looking to fill a beauty brand in their portfolio. And obviously, you can imagine if a KKR is interested in your brand, it usually says two things: one, huge potential, an opportunity to to drive scale. So what attracted me was all of those elements. I think one, the portfolio of brands is super exciting. I think at my level of my career, and many of you listening could appreciate this, that when you've gone and done the things that we all have done, as you take your next career opportunity, you're looking for impact. You don't want the perfect bow, you don't want it finished. And for me, it was a great place to come and take my 20 plus years of experience with brands and heritage and demand creation and marketing and bring it to a business that had powerful brands and innovation. And what they're really trying to do with many of these brands is they're moving to more omni-channel, right? So what was once a salon brand in color, you now see at times those brands sitting in retail. With the advent of COVID, more and more women and men were coloring their hair at home. Hair care. So you think of Wella care, other competitive brands. Hair care is booming in the professional beauty space. Walk into an Ulta and Sephora and you'll just see for yourself the number of brands in competition. Super exciting. OPI, number one global nail lacquer. So much fun. And we're kind of in that phase right now where in the past couple of years, tremendous amount of new influx of new leaders plus great legacy leaders. And we're in the middle of that path to growth and we're on a really great trajectory of really unlocking that potential for KKR.
So did that deal go through with KKR before you joined or shortly after?
Yeah, so it went through about 6 months before I joined. And then at the time, the new CEO, Annie Young-Scrivener, which she's our CEO, was brought in from KKR. And what she then set out to do in the next 6 to 8 months was really identify some talent gaps throughout the global organization and complemented the existing team. So I was brought in. The head of the Americas was brought in. So they've found pockets of external talent, both from within the beauty and professional beauty space, and a few of us who were not from beauty to come in and kind of collaborate on what we do to really unlock that growth and bring all of our great minds together.
Wow. Do you know details of that transaction? Like what valuation or what was the...
I think I have to take some hot sauce. I have to plead the fifth. Yeah.
So I'm in a different setup today, as you guys can tell. So I don't have my fancy light. Usually we have a light that goes off whenever you can't answer a question, but we don't have that today. So it's just going to be my voice today.
All right. Cheers.
Wow.
Wow.
Cheers. All right. So that is... oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh. I'm sorry.
This is as real as it gets. All right. So from now on, you're going to answer every question, right?
I'll do my best. I'll do my best.
All right. So valuation, but it was probably a large amount.
All I'd say is for anybody who could research KKR and you could look at their last 30 or 40 years of investments and usually their profile, you can guess. You can guess the range and you can guess what they're looking to get out of it.
Okay. Is it like more than $1 billion?
Oh yeah. I think there's, yes. I mean, I took my hot sauce, so let's just put it that way.
Okay, we'll put it that way. And okay, so obviously when a big company like KKR comes in and injects money, it's fully owned by KKR now?
Majority owned. There's still some, majority owned by KKR employees as well. Like many of us are investors as part of the opportunity, but they're the majority, yes.
Right. And so obviously when a big company comes in like this, it's all about scaling and there's a lot of money behind it that they can use to scale. Where are you guys spending now? Because obviously now they brought you on. Now it's about let's grow this machine. Where are you investing your marketing dollars right now? Like what are your top channels?
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting is what's fascinating is between a professional beauty and an omni-channel, the level of investment in marketing wasn't necessarily where the company was. So to start, there's a greater emphasis in demand creation, driving demand, both among pros, salons, stylists, and consumers. And I'd say that depending on the mix, so we have an interesting mix of brands. So I'll give you two examples that I think are really uniquely differentiated. So I'll look at Clairol. Anybody walks down, go to CVS, Walmart, Target, box color. Okay.
Okay.
It's a pretty big business, consumer business. Interestingly enough, in the last 2 years, we've actually reduced our investment in A and CPR marketing by 25% to 30. But we've seen market share growth. So we've gone from 10 to, I think this past month, 17.5% roughly of market share. And we've seen brand metrics search increase significantly. And I think it's a really good example for a lot of marketers listening that it seems counterintuitive. You're going to spend less and get more. With Clairol, one of the biggest opportunities was the brand didn't have a very well articulated consumer proposition or story. So we were marketing a lot of initiatives. And anybody who looks at media, like I use the analogy, 1+1 should get you 3. 1+1 was getting us a half or 1 because we weren't necessarily linking our product innovations to a story that drove equity. So the past 2 years, partnering with the global team, we repositioned and strengthened what does Clairol mean. And if anybody's out there in the world, this campaign called It's So Me, and actually goes back to the heritage of the Clairol brand 7 years ago. Does she or doesn't she? This playfulness of color. But what that allowed us to do is create a single thread of communication and then allowed us to really look at our investment differently. The second thing on that brand was very heavy traditional media, very heavy TV, because at the time we
Right.
were targeting mature women, up until older women. As someone who colors their hair, I don't like to refer to myself as old, but any of us who may have a gray hair as early as 28. And what we've been able to do is we haven't walked away from that as part of our mix, but we've gone from 80% of traditional media to maybe 5 or 10% and really looking at two major platforms, right? We're looking at heavy digital, so social. And I look at performance, so looking at influencer and community, and dabbling on OTT, dabbling on smart TV, dabbling in that medium to see whether or not it has the same impact.
And why do you think up until this, like traditional media has been on the decline for, it wasn't just this year, it's been on the decline for many, many, many years. In fact, I don't even know, I can't even remember the last time I watched TV. It's all OTT now. It's all, you know, Netflix, Amazon, like all of these, Amazon Prime, all these different channels. Like these are where most of the attention is being bought and like time spent, right? Where do you think that comes from? Is just like older board members or
No,
older leadership
I
teams? Is
think
that
there's two
why?
things. No, I think there's two. If you look at the category and you study all the dynamics of the category, the majority of those that were buying into this category were significantly older, and their penetration on smart TVs and up until the last few years, they weren't necessarily the largest from a penetration.
Uh,
So there was, and you can, anybody who's done this before, when you move away from something you trust, there's a lot of hesitation to pull the rug. And so I think up until the last couple of years, I don't think people in the company knew what to do. And they were dependent on what I would call an older model, media mix sufficiency. These are terms I think are antiquated, but a lot of agencies like them. And when I came in with the team, because of my past experience and because of the ability to use proxies, we were very much like, you've got to do a test and learn mentality. So it's not like we removed all of it overnight, but we significantly shifted and we were able to use proxies and start to see targeting, really honing on who the consumer was. That over 2 years, we were able to reduce 33% of our spend. But as I said before, like our effectiveness, our consumption, our market share, our net revenue, brand health metrics are much stronger. So that's a great example of just spending less, but I think it goes back to smart brand management. On the other side, I think we had a heritage on Wella. So Wella's color, as I said, in the salon. So you don't market to consumers. No consumer walks in and says, give me Wella color. But
yeah,
you're marketing to pros and stylists. And I think what's been interesting is anybody, so the majority of the world of stylists used to be in big salons. Since COVID, you see a rise of what we call the independent stylists. So they're not attached to a salon. So reaching them and influencing them is much more challenging and difficult. And that's where, from a media effectiveness, we've been starting to think about a few things. We tested traditional digital media. And with color, it's very different. You don't just convert. So for those who don't understand, there's a lot of science behind color. So as a woman who goes to a salon, I can tell you right now that my stylist goes, hey, I'm going to try a new brand and she screws it up, I'm never going back to her again. So you have to understand the mentality of my income is dependent on my client being happy. My client's happy when they get the results they need. So the journey of getting a stylist to either switch from her color brand she uses to another takes time. So our investments are a little different, but we've been spending a lot of time thinking about the influences that influence these stylists. As we all know, brands aren't doing it. Branded content isn't what's going to resonate. Influencers work the same way among pros. So spending a lot of time with what we call ambassadors, which are invested there, high visible influencers with great social reach and great credibility. So our investment is shifted to those types of investments, not to say paid. And luckily, we have a pretty powerful organic social platform, but it was finding the right content.
Okay, so now, let's bring it back high level. So you got traditional TV ads. You're still spending a little bit, like you said, 10%,
Maybe. I
or
mean,
something like that.
I think it's
And
getting
you
less and less. Yep.
Okay, and then you got OTT, you got paid social. Walk me through your top 5 channels and what percent you think you're spending in each one of these channels nowadays.
All right. So I have to buy brand because the brands are very different. So look at OPI and Clairol.
Okay.
They're actually more similar. They're consumer brands. I
Okay,
would
let's
say,
start there. Yeah.
right, the consumer brands, I think a little easier for this audience to understand. So if I think about 100% of my overall, and I'll look at all of my dollars. Okay. So depending what company you work for, is influencer working or non-working? I consider influencers paid. So let's just say it. So I think for those brands, I'd say 50% of our investment or more is spent on community. So all the work we do with our community, building our organic community, as well as investing in influencer partnerships, at least 50% and maybe more. Then I'd say probably for those, Clairol's a little different because there's media, but then I'd say pure paid and boost, another 50, probably 25% of pure media. And then for both of those brands, a lot of the decision making happens in store. So if you go to an Ulta, our dollars are spent in those environments, Ulta and Amazon, for example. So a lot of our marketing dollars aren't spent on what I'll call traditional media, but e-com excellence and setting up your shop online costs money.
Yeah.
And in Ulta, the investment in store is quite large. And anybody who goes to an Ulta, go walk the beauty aisle. There's a tremendous amount of investment in what we call merchandising or point of sale material. So those are still part of it. I look at those as working. Technically, they're qualified as non-working. But in the world of beauty, those last touch points have a pretty high conversion mechanism because many of these categories tend to be impulse.
Right. Okay. So you got the influencer community.
Influencer community and paid, call it all that. Probably 40,
all that
50,
together.
40, 50. You add another 25, 30 of paid. You then have some, and I'm not including social, we manage our channels differently, but organic's in there.
Yeah.
And then some media. Yeah. And then you do have, whether it's sampling or in store. So sampling is also a big part of different parts of the business. Care, it's very experiential. Very different than toy business.
So what would be so e-com excellence, how much of that do you spend? How much of your budget do you think you spend there? So 50% paid, 25% pure paid. E-com.
Yeah, I think it depends on, because there's syndication, there's reviews, all those bucket in. So the remaining, right? So it depends because where does a review start and stop versus influencer content? So I'm curious, this audience, we're having those conversations. Do you separate ratings and reviews and those community different from your different pyramid of influencers? It's getting muddy. It's getting complex because actually a rating and review is an influencer these days. It's no longer just a type. So that's what it's hard to break it down. And I'm thinking about how we have to report. So the way I have to report my media is different than how I think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because with the way you report it in the way that's easiest to measure sometimes.
Yeah.
And easiest to understand, but because you are getting into the weeds of things sometimes, and you kind of want to know where your dollars are being spent, right? And so that kind of reporting is a little bit more, probably a little bit more legwork to build those kind of reports.
Yeah, because don't forget, as a global company, I represent 2 of 15 markets. So you roll up to a global P&L. You then have different accounting and different rules of where the spends go. So there's the way we report, which makes it easier for the globe to look at it. But then there's where me and my team and how we approach it, purely because of when we're asked, which I'm sure all of us are getting asked now, what does that last dollar do? What's the ROI of that investment? We get it all the time, right? It's the first
And it's
question.
getting harder and harder,
Well,
right? You mentioned at the very beginning of the show, you said performance marketing was on the way on its way up, and that's why you left Mattel, and now it's kind of on the way
well, with the
down.
cookies deprecated, all these rules, we used to have very clear visibility. So now, I think as marketers, what I have learned, and I'm still learning. I think as a marketer, you're never fully a professor because the world changes. To me, I'm always looking for proxies or indicators of that performance. So, and you may have, for example, we don't have a direct to consumer business. On the pro side, we do. So in many cases, I don't see the last click, which means I can't fully attribute
Yeah,
my media dollars. But there's enough
yeah.
proxies and signals throughout the funnel that we have that I could use if the CEO says, is that dollar really working? Or did that work last month? And so my rule to my team is baseline and look at certain repetitive proxy KPIs. And then over time, that becomes a potential way for you to identify, did it go up to go down? Is it greater or less? That means, is it working? Is it not?
So let me put myself in your CEO's shoe. If I were to ask you, like, yeah, like how do you look at an influencer spend, for example? How do you convince your CEO that that additional $10,000 or $20,000 that you spent in influencer marketing is working? Like, what kind of KPIs are you sharing?
So I'll give you a good example. Well, if it's an individual kind of big influencer, more than $10,000, you usually look at EMV to dollar. So you can use an example, like EMV is what most people are going to use based on content. I don't love that because I think it's one component. What I'm very big on is I believe in doing test and learn. So for the OPI brand in last year, a big percentage of our media, we leveraged our branded assets. And both an agency and I have a really great brand manager who's like, I think we should be putting more of our dollars behind our influencers. I didn't tell anybody
Yeah,
this. We did it. And
yeah.
now we did small tests to as we went through, but then you can start to look at year over year consumption, market share, all of the numbers were higher. And so then when the CEO, then you start to build trust and equity. I don't ask permission for the small things. It's just too hard. I usually clear with my boss who reports to CEO about what I want to do. And I have enough experience to know that, and I'm also an owner of the company. I think it's also very different. I happen to be an owner now. So a very big philosophy of Wella. And frankly, all of us are owners. We all have a role to play and an exit opportunity.
I think most C-suites should be owners.
I,
If you're
well,
making all
I
the
agree.
decisions,
And I think it does change sometimes the way I will think about a decision because it will impact me on the back end. But sometimes you have to also take risks. But I think what I would say to all marketers is I like to look at leading indicators or proof points. And I always would preface a test going, look, I'm not sure. Here's my assumptions, my hypothesis. Here's what's going on. I want to carve out some dollars to validate whether that works. And if it works, we expand. If it doesn't, you move on. Rather than make like Clairol, we didn't in 1 month switch the entire marketing plan of Clairol. Like there's no way. But we did it over the course of 2 years, pretty significantly, because immediately the tests were proving out and we had enough confidence behind the decision to then go bigger and better. Plus, look, I'm one of a big team. I have a fantastic media team who's one of the best in the business, internal. And so I trust her implicitly when we're making media decisions with the right KPIs. I have a really strong marketing team behind me. And so I trust our gut instincts when we do tests and the results will speak for themselves. And look, we've had some that didn't work. We've tested with partners, we've tested with different media partners and publishers that just didn't work. But we acknowledged it and moved on.
so it sounds like you guys take you blend all your marketing spend together, and then you blend all the revenue associated together, and you just kind of it's like a and so you're just testing one thing at a time. You never test multiple things at a time, kind of
Well,
thing.
no, I mean, sometimes you can isolate. So, for example, in my world, you isolate one element at a time and mix it. So, yes, you can make tweaks. And the beauty of digital versus the old days of TV is you can make your tweaks week over week, right? Think of like dynamic creative or search. Like we can make those changes fairly quickly and have 1 or 2 weeks of data that tells us good or not. So, I would argue that in the world of digital, we're at a huge advantage of marketers today than 20 years ago because the speed at which you can make changes And the learnings come back so much quicker than the old days where you really didn't have visibility to the impact of what you were doing.
Yeah, yeah. It's so much. How much of, because the rules around cookies are changing and third-party cookies seem to be and slowly becoming, useless now. It seems like we're going back to the old days of brand awareness with more technology, so that we can still attribute some things, but you can't attribute all.
Well,
Like, where how do you think about performance
yeah.
marketing in 2023?
So again, because we're not direct to consumer, it's a component, right? So we can look at awareness and consideration, and you could look at conversion because we use a proxy, right? So conversion, we use a third party from off a social ad. You can click, and it'll give you a choice of retailers. So I can see enough to say you can see the likelihood you clicked into that retailer, specific retail for that product. We don't know if they actually purchased it, but high confidence that the media got you down the funnel. So we also should think about within our world, I have brands at very different health levels. I have brands like Naloxone that among loyal users have huge equity, but among general population, we have to grow. So for Naloxone, we may be spending more on the awareness funnel because you have to get that funnel wide enough to get, the new to brand to purchase. So that's one element. And you can track awareness and consideration. You can. Is it scientific? No. And then you think about, okay, what's my CPA or CPM and my proxy? Well, it depends on where you are on the funnel. It also depends on your cost structure. So I was thinking with this question that you asked me, what's a good CPA or CPM? I'll be honest, it's going to depend on the health of your brand and the health of your financials and if you're doing conversion versus acquisition, for us, an acquisition is a longer journey. So to me, it's about getting a baseline, which we usually will start with in any campaign. And then you watch and see, can you get more favorable and more favorable? So if you ask me some blank, what's a good CPA or the CPM, depending on where you are in your funnel, to me, there's a blank number. I mean, you could have a really good CPM at $18 if it's, your LTV, that customer is like 300. So I don't mind, but it depends on where you're on the funnel. So that's where the part of it, and again, I think you probably have people who are like performance marketing gurus. They should really be the ones to talk about this. I'm like a 101, 201. Like I learned it, but there's way more that I think I need to learn.
I started my career in performance marketing, and I just kind of seen, and that was just to preface this, that was 6.5 years ago. And I've just seen the evolution of it kind of just basically dying from the height of 2015, 2017, the heydays. Performance marketing, you can make a killing on performance marketing, and that's when drop shipping was a huge thing. Everyone went on Alibaba, bought something, and then sold it. Now it just seems, now brand matters so much more, and I love it. I'm here for that because you should have to build a brand. You can't just start a store and then in 30 days sell $1 million like back then. So it's normal now.
Well, I think what's funny is I remember back in 2015, 16, 17, like when I was starting to think about leaving Mattel, it was interesting because every recruiter I talked to wanted a unicorn. They wanted a performance marketing guru who also had 20 years of brand management experience. And yet they valued more the performance side. Ask any marketer today, right? Being a marketer is complex. It isn't just pretty creative. And to me, what I love about the industry and what I've been so grateful for is that my time at Mattel taught me some fundamentals. I think of like a toolkit or tool belt, and I think about learning from the absolute best on how do you build a foundation of what a brand is and why that language is important and how it translates to the decisions you make. And when those decisions are made, how you drive the loyalty and engagement. Then you think about, understanding supply chain and manufacturing and all the communication elements. Then running the commercial side of the business and really understanding your path to purchase. Sticking through, for me, my business was run through retailers. So anybody who thinks they have a direct relationship with the consumer who has to go through Walmart and Target, call me, because Target and Walmart are critically important players, and Amazon and Ulta. I mean, they're as important as the end consumer. So to work right, to understand that. So I think today's marketers, what I worry about is the young marketers who've come out are impatient, don't necessarily understand the value of learning. But I can tell you that, I feel grateful for my education at Mattel, at Fandango, and I still learn at Wella. Like I still evolve. But the experience is applicable. Like, I love when people are like, beauty's so different. Honestly, you want to sell a hair color, a nail polish, or a Barbie doll? If you really understand the fundamentals of demand creation and branding, you could do anything.
Wow. I want to dive into your time at Mattel
Mhm.
a little bit. But before we do that, quick question. We talked about marketing a bunch. How much are you guys spending in marketing dollars, like per month or per year
So I,
right now at
yeah,
Wella?
I will give you a percent to net revenue or our wholesale numbers because it's not public.
Okay.
I mean, so on average we're between 6 to 10%. So I know you
Okay.
want more specific. I mean, I'll tell
And
you.
what's the revenue? And what's the revenue right now at
I will give you the North America. How about that? I won't give you global. Um, and
Okay, let's
I'll
see.
give you like retail sales value, like what we publish, right? Because obviously not our internal,
Okay.
because that tells you too much about the profitability. So I'm going to say about US alone is probably about $750 million. Let's call it.
So $750 million markup is usually around what? Usually like 75, like 25% is your cost, kind of ish. So
Varies.
revenue to you guys. Hmm.
I'll say this. KKR
400 mil?
KKR acquired Wella because they saw the value. And look, if you have other public beauty brands, go look at L'Oreal. Most beauty companies, when run well, are fairly profitable, have very healthy margins. So I'll just say that.
Yeah. What is like the industry? If I was KKR looking and I was doing my research post, like what would I have been guessing in terms of like profitability? Would it have been like 60% margins kind of thing, or
Yeah, that's a good guess.
yeah? Okay,
Some
cool.
higher, some lower, but yeah. I mean, if I were KKR, I'd want higher.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, so
You know,
maybe Wella was actually 75%, which is what I guessed in the beginning.
yeah. No,
Just blink once. Just blink with your right eye, like once.
that's way too
If I'm
complicated. Right, left, in the screen, not the screen.
yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. So I think that's a good answer. I didn't get any messages from my producer, so I don't think we're taking any shots to hot sauce there.
Thank you.
So we're good. Now last time we talked about Mattel a lot, and I really want to dive into that. You spent 18 years, 17 years
Yeah.
almost, right, of your professional working career. You basically were the Barbie. You're like the Barbie CMO. If there was a Barbie doll of a CMO, you'd probably be that doll.
There's several of us. I mean, over the course of the years, right? I started off as a little itty bitty associate brand manager, right? At one point I was a VP of marketing, which is the most senior at the marketing. Then I was running the commercial. So to be fair, um, the real CMO, and you guys, and I'll quote Richard Dixon, that's his name. He's now become the new CEO of Gap and that company, but truly he's the visionary and CMO. I would call him the visionary and creative who taught me everything I know. That being
Who's your
said,
mentor?
yes.
Okay.
And that being said, yes, I mean, at different moments in my career, there were several of us at different moments who had our hands in the cookie jar, protecting the brand. But yes, I definitely had uh, my time there.
What was the biggest thing that you've learned? Uh, Obviously, Barbie is a global brand. What do you think is the number one most important lesson you've learned working at Mattel?
Yeah, don't get complacent. I think one of the things I think is fascinating is, and this is a brand who's now Barbie's going on 65 years. I think for many brands that came out of the gate strong, and you can look at a Burberry, you can look at a Volkswagen, any brand, many of them have gone through what Barbie did, right? A big dip. And that's because you get complacent. And that's because you run and stick to a game plan that's always worked. So the biggest lesson is don't be complacent. The second is also, I think it's really important. And most brands can't answer this question today, but at the end of the day, how would you define your brand DNA? So we all have DNA that doesn't change. Being very, very clear, because your DNA should not change. So first question for many brands who are in trouble or seeing a decline is, the first question is, what is your DNA? Go back to when it started. What was the heart and soul of what made the brand unique? And the first question you ask yourself is that element of DNA still relevant? So I'll give Barbie because I think these are theoretical terms. So
Right.
Barbie, in 1959, Ruth Handler founded Barbie. And the entire vision behind Barbie was, at the time, people may not know this, but the only thing little girls can play with was baby dolls. So imagine if you're a little girl and, toys, you role play. So if all you do is play with baby doll, what do you think little girls are practicing? To be a mom, which was and is, as I'm a mom, an important career.
Wow.
But that was the only thing that girls were learning to role play. So Ruth Handler's vision was, I want my daughter to see the potential. And so Barbie was designed as a blank canvas, if you will. And that's why Barbie's had now over 150 plus careers. She's been a pilot, an astronaut, a doctor, a pet vet, an ice skater, a newscaster, a judge, you name it, because at the element of this. So fast forward to like the 2000s when I got there and the brand was starting on deep decline. And to be honest, a lot of what was happening those first few years is we were trying to copy the competition. We're like, oh, what are they doing? Like whack-a-mole, or how do we respond? And should Barbie go in that direction? And should Barbie go in that direction? And until Richard took the team and really said, guys, at the end of the day, we can't know where we're going until we know where we've been. And so the first question, they spent days offsite and said, at the end of the day, let's go back to the basics. Barbie's was always about aspiration, cultural relevance, and fashion. Those are the three buzzwords. And we said to ourselves in 2007, 8, 9, do moms still have girls fully reached their full potential? I think we all said there's still a moment and an appetite for stereotypes to be torn down and that women can be everything. Think about all the news the last 10 years of sports. Think about the news of being a judge. I mean, there's so many roles, right? So there was still resonance with what Barbie was about. And so we knew that our brand still had relevance. And it was just about how we activated it. And what I learned there was start with the fundamentals and be very clear with what the brand is. And then everything you do comes out of that. Your messaging, your innovation pipeline, being very diligent, and in many cases being very reminding the world of exactly what she is. And then fast forward now, that was in 2009, and now we're talking 2023, the potentially most successful movie in Warner Brothers history. And don't remember, Harry Potter was their movie. So imagine this, right? So for a brand that was a girl doll, sexualizing girls, all the negativity, to now have reached that pinnacle could not have happened without the many, armies of people and effort and leadership, but with great discipline to keep the brand really focused on what she is. And did you see the movie?
I did not,
Okay.
but I was going to ask you, I'm going to definitely watch it. So, no spoilers, but how many years in the making was this movie, do you think?
So I know. So the first discussion of a theatrical, well, I'll tell you two stories. In 2003, I was an associate brand manager. And as one of my projects, I was asked to do a strat plan, an entertainment strat plan for Barbie. Now, back then, we had DVDs, and the DVD stories, we sold toys, very successful. I think we had 25 videos. And I remember at the time in the strat plan, I actually pulled it out recently, the discussion of should Barbie be a theatrical or not. And it was based on sizing, opportunity. And at the end of the day, the findings were this. It is not the first thing you go to, right? A theatrical can only be successful if your brand is very healthy and the foundation's there, number one. And a brand like Barbie can't be an indie movie, right? There's going to be expectations for it to be a blockbuster. So the first script, I'm trying to remember, I believe the first time a studio and script came in, and it wasn't this one, I want to say 2009, 2010. And I believe this was the third iteration because it started with different studios. I believe it was the third, and I'm pretty sure. So it was, call it 10 to 12 years in the making, because getting the story right, getting the right story. And you can imagine there's a lot of expected stories. I won't tell you, but this movie isn't what I think people would have expected. But now that's all people, of course, is what the movie was about. But I don't think it was beautifully done. I will say that it paid homage and honor to what Barbie is. It poked fun at all the things we who work for the brand and love the brand and the world thinks about, and they did it in a really great way. It was over the top. It was eye candy and inspiration. So it was beautifully done.
what would you give? What would you rate the movie from?
From a Rotten
I mean,
Tomatoes
obviously you have
perspective,
your bias.
because I used to work at Fandango, so Rotten Tomatoes, so I would say it was fresh. But that can be my other
Okay.
career, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you know, yeah, I mean, I think it was for what it was. It was like a must see, partially because it's iconic. Like, I feel like it's like when people are like, you're not going to see a Star Wars movie. I think there's so much curiosity about the brand. And I think what was amazing was the audience asked me 5 years ago what I thought the audience would look like, and it was vastly different. There was men, there was women of all ages, there was teenagers who didn't find Barbie cool, little girls,
Mm,
and what was amazing is everybody wore pink. Everyone walked in the theater with some element of pink. It was, I can tell you, since I've been to a Star Wars movie, I've not been to a movie when people dress up. And it was remarkable to see the excitement and the laughter um and I get calls from all facets of my world, from those I grew up with, my mom's generation. Everybody wanted to tell me what they thought about it. And the unique thing is every person walked away with a very similar message, which is very rare in a movie or an appreciation, I
so,
would say.
well, I mean, one of many reasons why we had to get you on the show as well was because you worked at Mattel, but also just your background, and it's fascinating. So yeah, it's cool to hear the perspective from someone that worked inside. Um, I mean, we talk a lot about these big brands and what you have to do to maintain the brand, and that is a challenge, right? um, because if you don't modernize, you will have to die. And we've seen Barbie transform in many different ways in different careers, but also Barbie as a doll, and now Barbie as a movie. And there's many different things, many different ways that Barbie has taken shapes. What do you think is the number one thing for a lot of these legacy brands? Now you're working at a legacy brand. What is like what are some tips that you'd give to these guys that are running these big legacy brands on how to remain and stay relevant as times change?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is be very clear on what your brand is and what it is not. So I think, go back to the basics. Like at the end of the day, name a brand, like, know the guardrails and the permission that you can go, which means there's a lot of things you'll say no to that are very cool. So I think number one is be disciplined, understand what your brand is. Don't be afraid. Like I think the biggest thing is Barbie a doll? Is at the end of the day, being very clear that Barbie isn't just a doll, right? Barbie's an idea. So one, we were, and frankly, that's very true to what the vision was. And the minute you
Yeah.
can sort of think about your brand and authentically think about what it is, you then can say to yourself, well, how are other platforms or ways in which Barbie can inspire little girls? So that could be through entertainment, through at the time it was like CD-ROMs and video games. I think when you think about merchandising, like toothbrushes, well, okay, but it's an iconic brand. So those are extensions that could happen. But I think for many people, it's hard not to get distracted by the new shiny penny and what that new brand is doing. We all work in industries where there's a new player every day. In beauty, it's even beauty and toy are very similar. There was very high barriers to entry in toy for a long time because of your relationship with retailers. Starting in like,
Right.
then all of a sudden with the opening of ecom and DTC, anybody can come out with a toy brand and can manufacture it. So as barriers to entry get low, there's a lot, and there are things other brands can do that you'll never be able to do. I remember being at Barbie being, oh, I wish we could do that. Right? Oh, that seems so easy and so cool. So I think it's good to admire. But my advice is, innovate with what makes sense for your brand. Because I think if you're authentic and I think if you do it well, you will drive huge success. And I think we learned that in many cases the hard way at Mattel for several years. And it's very public. You can watch the stock price, the Barbie business. It didn't turn around in 1 year. I mean, we had probably 7 really tough years, really tough before the turnaround. Then there was a wave of growth. Then 2014, 2015 started to slow down, reinvention again. And so I think that's my advice is be disciplined, know who your brand is, um, and innovate within those rules. Just don't try and mimic what the next brand is doing. You'll fail.
So one of the biggest, most controversial rebrands as of late is Twitter,
Mhm.
and its rebrand to now X. Have you been following that at all?
Yep, I have.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on what's going on in the Twitter HQ right now?
Chaos would be what I would think. And for that, I mean, there was a public article that Lindy Yacarino, it was not the best article for her. Look, I think rebranding is a very thoughtful, careful decision. And I think usually there's years and months of thinking behind it, and usually a justification or rationale that is introduced slowly. Uh, the timing of what was done, the thinking behind it, I don't understand it. And I think we'll look back and it'll be one of, if Twitter survives, it will look back as one of the potential downfalls of what they did personally, because I don't know what doing X, why that in any way enhances the experience of what Twitter was meant to do and meant to be. It was a conversation platform, and I think
Yeah, it's not like they added new features or did something crazy. They
or
just
what
suddenly
Facebook did, right? Like the other day, Facebook, Instagram, Meta was the holding company, but the brand of Facebook and the brand of Instagram has remained very true, right? It's I don't know. Even when they say it, formerly known as Twitter, it sounds like a game. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not following as much anymore. I'm not a huge Twitter user. I think brands use it, conversations. Um, but now I think most people I know are playing around um, with Facebooks, with Threads, and playing around there. And now it's a new shiny penny. I think there's limits to it as well, but um, that's my opinion. I mean, I'm curious if other marketers and business people would agree, but I haven't read much that says brilliant, that this is like a brilliant rebranding, or wow, that's
yeah.
super smart. I mean, I haven't read anyone react to it. And also, it's evident that it wasn't thoughtful, or at least thoughtful in the way brand marketers would. I'm not going to call the thinking. There's probably some rationale. I don't get it yet.
So you've been very transparent this entire show, and this one question we always get every single guest. But I would love for you to be transparent with this one. How much are you making as a CMO at Wella?
Yeah, I mean, I can give you. It's hard, like, so base, potential bonus, current bonus. So I'd say let's leave my potential long term equity out, because until you have it, it's not worth
Yeah,
anything. Okay,
let's leave that out.
so I'd
Yeah,
say all in, like, you know mid six figures, not high six
mid.
figures. Hmm.
So that's like 400, 500K.
Yeah,
You've answered it. You are the first to ever answer this
yeah.
question.
I'm
That's
not opposed. Here's the truth, right?
wow.
Like, you can find
Love that.
CMOs earning, and depending, right? And look, I think the CMO title is, there's a ton of CMOs, right? Like,
Yeah,
so I think there's roles and brands that will pay you seven figures, depending on the company, and there's less. For me, and I'd say this very honestly, for
yeah,
many of us, we're very fortunate. So I earn a very good living. For me, the decision to do this was about the learning and the experience and wanting to love what I do. So for me, there's a minimum that I need to earn, that I want to earn. Um, and after that, it's, yeah, everyone wants to earn seven figures, but I'd rather love what I'm doing.
exactly. Do you think there's a correlation between how much you make and how many pillows you have on your bed?
Nope, because I've had this for a long time and I didn't make this much money for a long time. But I like that question.
Oh man. So I'm gonna test out a new segment. I do want to learn a little bit more about your background and history, because the way you think and your growth trajectory of your career has been fascinating. I know there are probably mentors in your life, and I want to dive into that, because no one becomes successful on their own, right? So I want to dive into that. Before that, there's a short little segment that we started a month ago. Um, it's a fun segment. I'm going to tell you three jokes, kind of dad jokes that are related to the business world. And if you laugh, you take a shot of hot sauce. And if you don't laugh, I'll take a shot of hot sauce. I'll give you three tries. So there are three questions.
So if I laugh, it's hot shot. Wait, if I laugh, hot sauce. If I don't, I'm good.
Yeah, if you don't, you're good. Then I have to take the
Okay.
hot sauce shot. Okay. All right. I'm going to give you three jokes. Um, What's the difference between a parent's wallet before and after kids?
What?
There are pictures where the money used to be. Okay. All right. So that's one. That's one down. You're stoic. All right. Okay. We got a second one here. Um, where did the serial killer hide his dead bodies?
Where?
On page 2 of Google search results. Okay. Tough. Okay, it looks like okay. This one might get you. This one has been a
Okay.
fan favorite. So I don't know if I told you, but last year I started a monkey breeding business, but it failed because I was only using male chimps.
No hot
Okay.
sauce for me.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Like, were you close to laughing at all, or just like not funny?
No, not funny. I'm sorry. I
Oh
mean,
man. All right.
yeah. I mean, there wasn't a hot sauce on the line. Maybe I would have giggled because to be social and nice, but I don't want to take any more hot sauce.
Yeah, you can't be nice when it comes to you. You even disclose your salary. I mean, fun fact: you're the first. You're the first C-suite slash founder to ever
Really?
disclose.
I don't.
Yeah.
First of all, you can probably figure it out. And I mean, look, we all ring fence things, but I don't. I don't know why people. I mean, I'm not embarrassed about. I mean, it's within reason of what you assume. So yeah, you take plus or
Yeah.
minuses,
No,
right?
love
I
that.
asked you, right? Base, bonus, there's other stuff. So you put it all together roughly.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so let's dive. Let's learn a little bit more. I mean, we've learned so much about the business. We've learned so much about Wella and also Mattel. Um, what was life for Lori growing up? Like, what were you as a kid? Like, what were you into, and what was like family life like when you were growing up?
Okay, so Lori Pantel is the firstborn of a set of triplets.
Whoa!
I'll let that sit.
Wow!
Yes, so I am the oldest by 5 minutes to my sister and 9 minutes to my brother. So that
Oh
explains a
wow! Two
lot.
girls and a
Two girls and a boy. And I'm,
guy. Okay.
not 20. So this was before tons of fertility stuff. So I think
Wow.
that explains a lot of uh, just environment, competitiveness, always having people around you. So I grew up in Montreal. I'm a Canadian. Traditional
Represent.
household, represent from Montreal. Mom and dad in the picture, nuclear family, middle income. Dad had worked for a family business. That was good. That was bad. That was good. That was bad. Whole other sideshow. So
Yeah.
education and a degree was critically important to my dad. He had not graduated college. So academics were like
Mm,
were always at the forefront as far as I can remember. So doing well in school. I was a great student. School came fairly easy to me. I was fairly social. I was tall at 12 and, not the cute little girl, but I
how
did,
tall? How tall are you?
I'm now
Are you
five
now?
six, and I was this height at like 11 or 12. So I was pretty tall when
Oh wow.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
think I developed humor. I think I'm fairly funny, but I use humor a lot because when you're a
You
girl,
didn't laugh at my joke.
well, because
You didn't laugh at my
they
joke.
weren't funny.
Okay, fine.
But as a girl, you're either cute or you're funny. So I wasn't cute, so I was funny. But high school life, like I was a ski instructor, so I skied my whole life. Got trained as a ski instructor. I was a
Wow.
competitive. Used to race, skiing. Um,
Okay.
and then huge family, like everyone lived in Montreal, so grandparents, cousins, normal life. Like I feel very blessed. I had a very uneventful upbringing. I was surrounded by lots of love. Had to work for everything. I mean, very much like values were important. So had jobs when I was 16. If I wanted to backpack Europe, I had to earn the money myself. So very much that was how I was raised. And
Love that.
yeah, so and I feel like in today's day and age, it's a whole other conversation of raising children today, but I'm trying to instill that in my children. Um, Went to college and thought I was going to be a lawyer. Did undergrad in business, went to McGill because what do you become a lawyer? Applied to law school, took the LSATs, and I was a kid who was like I was always top of my class. I think my LSAT score was like an 89, which was the end of the world. Like I bombed, in my opinion. Remember crying on my front porch, and my mom was like, "Well, maybe law school isn't for you." And it was. I look back at a defining moment. Had I done well in the LSAT, none of my life would be what it is. So it forced me to look outside. Had a great professor who's like, "You should look at consulting." I'm like, "What the hell is consulting?" And she's like, "Well, it's a good starting job out of college. It's like where smart people go, and you learn frameworks and you help companies and whatever." So I, of course, missed the cutoff of every job interview because usually they do recruiting in October. So I don't know.
Right.
I must have sent out, I swear to God, at the time, before LinkedIn was here, 1,000 resumes and got every rejection possible. Just there was no roles. And typical in my life story, a friend of my friend's brother was at a firm in DC, McKinsey Partners, small startup, looking for associates. And I'm like, I applied. They said no. They're like, just give me a resume anyway. Got the job interview, flown to DC, final round, got the offer. When I got the offer, I then showed them the rejection letter from like the year prior. But for me, it's become the tale of my life. Like sometimes things where I used to come to things not the traditional way. So I've learned
Yeah.
being patient and being driven helps. Spent 3.5 years living in DC, but traveling around the world, the US, working for great partners and learning to be strategic. I mean, really honing curiosity, learning how to structure presentations, learning how to ask questions. It was really analytics. Like that's what I learned. Then, yeah, I can keep going, but then went to business school and my life since then.
So I think growing up in a middle, I don't know if you agree, but growing up in a middle income family really teaches you about hustle and grit. Like I grew up in probably lower middle, actually pretty poor when I was growing up. Like to
Yeah.
be honest, I
So
had
I
a single
wasn't. I
single
mean,
mom.
so we were middle, like we didn't need, for example, we had what I needed. There was never not food on the table, but if I wanted an expensive pair of
No.
jeans, it was like,
Oh yeah,
you get
same,
Gap,
same.
and if you
Yeah,
want it, you can pay the difference. Even though they may have been able to, it was very much about you don't need that. So that's very different than
exactly,
today's day and age. Yeah.
exactly. So you had that hustler mentality. Dad was kind of like entrepreneur, right? Um, And so, did you have any other people in your life that, like, an uncle or like mentors that kind of helped you along the way as you
Not
went along
really.
your career?
Not until I started my career. To be honest, I mean, my mom and dad were amazing. I didn't have professionals within my immediate family to look to. I had a couple of professors or teachers early on that were like plucked me out and said, push me out of my comfort zone. But really, the mentorship for me started as an associate before my undergrad. Before I went to grad school, one of the partners and associates had just sort of become this mentor of mine ad hoc, but I really learned from them. And then coming out of business school, like throughout my career, they've usually become people I've either worked for or with who've now become lifelong mentors who I still lean on when I'm taking opportunities, who, help guide when I'm making tough decisions in my career. And then I'm lucky enough to have a phenomenal group of women friends who are all professionals, right? So I have a community of either through my kids' school, through business school, men and women, but mostly it helps with other women. And so we often support each other. And I live in an environment where most of my mom friends of my kids work full time, which is important because you share a lot of the same struggles and tensions. But yeah, I don't hear you anymore. Oh,
Oh, there you
yeah,
go.
much better.
Um, we're just about to wrap up. Oh my God, I've muted myself the whole time. For people that are interested in what you are doing and kind of wanting to reach out because you support a lot of women as well. If they wanted to reach out and kind of just follow along your career journey, what's the best place. Are you on any kind of social platforms
Yeah,
or
I mean,
LinkedIn, like
look, LinkedIn's the
Twitter?
easiest. I mean, I have a professional handle on Instagram, but it's really for Wella. So, and I have a personal one, which is really my kids. So, I don't use social media for professional networking. I don't. LinkedIn's the best way, and I'm pretty
Yeah,
responsive. So that's the best way to reach me.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lori, for coming on. We're gonna have to do round two. I'll come up with some better questions. I think we only did 2 shots of hot sauce, which I'm
Well,
kind of
two plus
embarrassed
the
about.
intro. Two plus the intro. That's
Plus the
three.
intro, so there's only 3, so I'm a little embarrassed. So I'm gonna have to up my game on the questions for round two. And yeah, thank you so much. This was super duper fun.
Oh, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you guys, and I look forward to hearing the feedback.
All right. Bye. Hey, hope you enjoyed that episode. I know I did. My mouth was burning on fire for about 30 minutes there, so I had to take a quick break before I recorded this, but I really just wanted to say thank you for tuning in. Most of us work at home nowadays, and we're all just in our pajamas, in our t-shirts, and in our hoodies. It just feels really fun and really light, and that's the kind of vibe that I'm trying to give. If there's anything that you want to add into the show, new segments or new topics to talk about, feel free to throw it into the comments below. Thank you so much again. Would not be here without your support. Until next time, peace out. Hope to see you soon.